Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 4 matchup between the Clemson Tigers and the Florida State Seminoles. Two of your top powers in the ACC going head-to-head in Week 4, but these two teams are definitely viewed differently right now. Florida State's a team that is ranked 4th in the country. And honestly, at this point, it's almost expected that this team is going to be right up there as a college football playoff team, considering obviously their dominant Week 1 win over LSU. But Clemson on the other side, this is not a team to underestimate. Clemson has obviously had a slower start. They had a really bad loss in Week 1. But since then, this team I would definitely say has clicked. They are definitely looking much better than they did in Week 1. And so that said, Clemson is definitely a team to keep an eye on as we look forward to Week 4. And what an opportunity as they're taking on the Seminoles. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started with your team trends. Florida State beat Boston College 31-29 in Week 3, which Boston College is probably the worst team in the ACC. They are not a good football team this season. And, they lost to Northern Illinois just a couple of weeks ago. So for them to compete right up next to a Florida State team that is widely considered as the best team in the ACC, that was a bit concerning what we saw there. But still a win's a win, and Florida State got it done. That would have been a devastating loss for this team if they were to have dropped that one. But for Clemson, beat FAU 48-14, which FAU, not a bad football team. They did have a bit of a slow start against Charleston Southern FCS team, and then they ended up beating them 66-17, and then obviously the embarrassing loss to Duke on the road 28-7 in Week 1. But once again, since then, this team looked pretty good against FAU. Definitely an impressive win for this team, and they actually looked like a legit offense, which is something that we've been waiting for. So that is something you want to keep in mind heading into this matchup. Games will be on the 23rd in Clemson. So the Tigers being the home team for this matchup, this is a team that is brutal to beat at home. We saw South Carolina do it last season, which it was such a big deal when South Carolina did it because it is so tough to win in Clemson. So for Florida State, Florida State's a team that you probably could say is the better team between these two right now, but Clemson has got a very strong home field advantage. Spread's going with the Seminoles by 2, over-unders 55. FPI is also going on the Florida State side, 57%. Series history, Florida State leads at 20-15. We've seen Clemson win the last 7 matchups. It's been a long time since Florida State won against Clemson. Last time was 2014, so it's been almost a decade since we last saw Florida State win, which obviously FSU's been a team that's been pretty down in recent years. They're finally back on the rise and finally a big national contender once again, but it's crazy to think just a couple of years ago, this was a team that was very much a disappointment and just not a good football team. But tides have definitely turned since then. Stat comparison for this one, Florida State is 3rd in the country in points per game, 49th in points allowed. They are a top 40 team in both passing and rushing, and they are 98th in pass defense, 53rd in rush defense. So this is a strong football team on both sides, but offensively, they've especially been impressive. Defensively, this team was a bit vulnerable against Boston College, allowing 29 there to just a bad football team, which that does happen sometimes. When you have such a heavy favorite going up against a team that's maybe towards the bottom of the conference, which that game was a situation of the top versus the bottom in the ACC there in Week 3. Sometimes we can see surprises where maybe the underdog plays better than expected just because they're still a conference team, but either way, that's a game that just should not have been that close. But for Clemson on the other side, this team is 54th in points per game, 41st in points allowed, 30th in rush yards a game. This is a team that is strong in the backfield. Passing game, kind of a slow start, but Cade Klubnik is still a great quarterback in my mind. He's definitely a player that's got a lot of potential. Still very young. I wouldn't be surprised if he was one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC for sure in a few weeks once we see him get more experience. But Jordan Travis for Florida State is already there. He's been excellent so far this season. And we saw that last year as well. That was a big reason why this team was so good last year, plus why this team is expected to be even more of a contender this season. Your recent matchups, Florida State beat Boston College by 2, beat Southern Miss, beat LSU, and that LSU win still remains such an impressive win. LSU is a team that has really proven themselves to still be good since I mean, beating them 45-24 was extremely impressive, should not be overlooked at all. I mean, I know week 3 was a bit of a disappointment, but this team against Southern Miss, against LSU, just so impressive. So we've seen what this team can do. It's just, can this team remain consistent at that level? But Clemson on the other side beat FAU, beat Charleston Southern, lost to Duke 7-28. So where Clemson kind of had the disappointment at the beginning of the season, this team has definitely, I would say, improved since. And FAU is nothing even close to Florida State. So we're going to get a pretty good sign as to where this Clemson team stands here in week 4, because Florida State is about as good of a team as Clemson is going to play this season. So I mean, if Clemson can win this matchup, that really shows some big-time growth within this team, and I feel like that really raises the ceiling of Clemson looking forward to the future and the rest of the season. Your key points for this one, Florida State. This team is back. They're very much a contender this season, and I mean, this is a complete experienced football team that is built to win this season. That's a big reason why this team has had such high expectations, is because of the experience on this team. And I mean, last season, they exceeded expectations last season. They turned out to be a really good team with a lot of young talents. So you consider that last season, it makes perfect sense that this team is ranked in the top 4 right now as we look forward to week 4. But for Clemson, this team finally started to click in week 3. This is a team to keep an eye on. They shouldn't be overlooked, and they got home field advantage. That is a big reason why I think the spread is so close for this one. Florida State, there's no hiding it. They're probably the better football team right now, but Clemson being at home is a huge advantage for them. A really tough team to beat at home, and so it's definitely a matchup that could go either way. And with that, let's get to the prediction here for Florida State and Clemson coming up here in week 4. This is one that I definitely went back and forth on, but in the end, I do want to go with the Noles. 31-27 is my predicted final score. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if this was maybe a higher scoring matchup. This is kind of moderate scoring, but you got two offenses that have definitely clicked, and defensively, Florida State was a little bit vulnerable last week. I think that Florida State plays a lot better in this one. I mean, they're going to be much more prepared to play a good football team in this matchup, but Clemson, I do think Clemson keeps it close. I think that Clemson is a much better football team than they were a couple of weeks ago, and I think they put up 27, which honestly I think will bring some optimism with this team. I mean, there was not much optimism in week 1 when Clemson lost to Duke and only scored 7 points in that matchup, but I feel like this is a team that has gotten better since. They really haven't played any good opponents since that Duke game, but I do think Clemson is a better team now, so I do think it stays close. But Florida State does get the win 31-27 in the end. And I mean, it's 55%, but I mean, Clemson being at home is the one main thing they have going for them, but Florida State is just the better team right now. But yeah, I'm taking the over. I'm taking Florida State cover the spread in the end, and definitely one of the key games of week 4. But with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup. Who do you think wins this one? And stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.